We're going to start in this lesson to fade the prompts we've been using from broad, very helpful gestures, what dog trainers call literal, to more stylized hand signals. One of the beauties of prompt fading as a way of getting the behavior is its elegance. You'll always have in your back pocket a hand signal that is a reminder to your dog of the original training process. So if you elect to not do the extra labor involved in getting him to respond reliably to verbal cues, you can still get him to sit, lie down, or move through space using your hand signals. So we're picking up our sit from stand, and where we left off, she was doing it for an empty hand, but for a broad literal signal. Let's see how she does today. 1 for 1, very good. Position pay. 2 for 2, who's a good girl. Whoops. There's a good girl. That's so good. Very good. Okay. 4 for 4. Just going to get her up. Good girl. She's a very good girl. Okay, so looking at my next step, it's a smaller hand signal, so less literal, and she's nice and warmed up. Now, for a smaller hand signal, sometimes it can become very tempting to be all over the map and do one big one, one small one, depending on how the dog does rep to rep. But that's a really bad practice. We want to be making our push, drop, and stick decisions based on how well the dog does over the set of 5. And so that means I want to standardize within my set. Let me show you. Okay, so smaller signal, let me get it into her stand first. Good girl. I'm going to pay that stand because I need it for my setup. What a good girl. Okay, so my movement, because she's a large dog, I'm doing it fairly high. If she were a smaller dog, I might very well go a little bit lower. But once again, I want to make sure that I'm standardizing. I'm keeping my elbow kind of glued to my body and doing kind of a more stylized hand signal than I was when I was simulating the prompt. And I just wait. Oh, she's a good girl. And she gets it right as a double because that was a very small one. Okay, get her up. Small hand, good girl, 3 for 3. Who's a good girl? Small signal, very good girl. That's a very good girl. And one more. Thinking. Notice that I'm not repeating my signal. I'm not chanting the signal. Doing so would be the same as repeating a verbal cue, like, sit, 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 sit. We never want to do that. Who's a good girl? Okay. So that last one had a long latency, but doesn't matter. So my next behavior is down from sit, and I'm going to be repeating this exact same process. Where we left off is she was doing an empty hand, but a very literal signal, which means all the way to the floor. Boom. Okay, and then I pay. You can pay on the floor, pay with your signal hand, put it in your hand, or pay with your other hand. It doesn't matter as long as she's collecting it in a down. I'm going to go ahead and get my sit. There we go. Empty hand, straight down. Good. 2 for 2. Nicely done. It's a good girl. Yeah, very good girl. Straight down. Good girl. All the way to the floor. Once again, notice that I'm standardizing. Very good. Oh, she went into her sit by herself, which is happy accident. Straight down. Good girl. 4 for 4. Good girl. Oh, she's a very nice girl. Straight down. 5 for 5. Okay, so my next fade for down is going to be that I'm going to go halfway. So in her case, because she's a large dog, that means I'm going to go to my knee. If she was a much smaller dog, I might very well go halfway between the floor and my knee, and then do an extra step at the knee, and then do the one which is the final one I'll show you. But because she's large, her slightly faded signal or slightly smaller signal means I'm going to go to my knee. Oh, what a good girl. Plenty of dogs when you go to this step, will not do what Lulu just did, which is, splat to the ground on the very first step. Now, she is warmed up, but still, a lot of dogs will kind of puzzle it out and wait, and finally they'll go down in a very kind of doubtful way, saying, can't possibly be this, could it? And then you pay. To the knee, good girl. 2 for 2. Get my sit back. She's really on her game today. To the knee. Once again, I'm standardizing. Now that time, she gave me a nice sort of pawing hesitation, like, was that the right thing? Notice that I did not repeat my signal. I didn't say, okay, I'm going to start all over again. I just held in position. I don't want to chant my signals. So she's a 3 for 3. She's got what we call infinite latency. She's got as long as she needs to do the behavior. As long as she's still working the problem, the rep is still alive. What a good girl. 4 for 4. Who's a clever girl. To the knee, down she goes, and pay. Very nice. So now my next signal is going to be, in her case, a no bend. So this is the most stylized that I'm going to get with her. And it looks like this. I'm not allowed to bend at the waist. So I make it the down signal, but it's not. There we go. And she did it. That was quite typical. She looked at it and she was looking at me very doubtfully, as though sort of familiar, and lately down seems to work, but they don't easily go. You'd think that this would be easy because down for a large dog is less expensive than sitting up or standing. So we call it sometimes a grab. Too bad. Okay, so that's in 1 for 2. That was a dud trial because she changed position. Reacquire my sit. Pay that. And as long as she's sort of good girl. Now those little stutters that you saw, they're really typical. That's the dog saying, it can't possibly be this. The other thing is that if you think about it, the treats are up here and down is slightly further from the treats. So there's a little tiny bit of Premackiness to down for a small signal. Whoops. So sit from down is currently on a lure. There we go. So she's a 3 for 4 right now. Hiccup, but she's still working it. She didn't quite break position, so trial is still on. What a clever girl. 4 for 5 on her first set. That's formidable. That's really, really good. Okay, so as she's in a down, we're now going to work on sit from a down in a dedicated way. And where we left it, she was doing it for a lure. And so now I'm going to try to see if she'll do it for a hand signal. So let me warm her up first with our last step, which was a first full food lure. She did it. Whoops. Position pay. Get my down. Whoops. Oh, I should see what I did there was I gave her a full down signal, which I didn't need to do. Her current criteria is that. Now I'm going to try a full hand signal for sit from a down, but without the food in it, and see what happens. Once again, she's got infinite latency. This is as close as we get to dogs thinking. Oh, what a good girl. That's a very good girl. I think I might have made too big a sound there. Okay. This is calculus for dogs. It's not easy. This is very non-literal. Too bad. So I commiserate. She changed position. She guessed wrong. Get my sit back. There we go. I'm going to pay that. Get my down. My down is my setup. What a good girl. And then what a good girl. That was a fancy one. She got style points for that one. Very snappy. Get my down, my setup behavior. I'm going to pay my setup behavior because I'm asking for it at current criteria. Oh, full hand signal. I believe that is a 3 for 4. What a good girl. At the same time, putting money in the bank of my down from sit. Nice broad sit. What a good girl. Very nice. So she did an incredibly good job. If your dog has difficulty with sit from a down, there's a couple of splits that you can use. One is you can do, as we did with Plan C for dogs who were literal with the lure, is rather than going from a really, really apparent lure to nothing, is tuck it in your hand again, and then do it and give infinite latency and see if that works. Okay. Another split that you can try is go half height, and that looks like this. So let me get my down. Whoops, let me sit for, I need down from a sit. There she goes. And that would be, instead of going all the way, I go part way. There we go. And then raise her. That can sometimes be a useful split. And the final split that can sometimes work if the dog is very dug in, and you'll know they're very dug into their down. They're rolled on one hip, or they're looking kind of comfy down there. Is you can, there we go, do something a little bit staccato. So, in other words, do your signal and then, okay, anything that's going to kind of pep them up a bit is often good to defy gravity type behaviors. So basically you're going sit and then tap your hand. Anything that's going to get them kind of get them moving. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to move on to down from stand. Now, let's stop for a moment and think about what we would do. Based on the plans that you've seen unfold so far, how would you go about training this? What's the template? And the template is, as it has been for other behaviors, which is first, get it for a very literal prompt. Okay, so can we prompt the behavior? And in this case, we're going to be using a food lure. Then we're going to fade that prompt, and we're going to fade it in a way that initially we do the same motion, but without the food visible, and then we start to gradually stylize. And that is exactly what we're going to do for down from stand. Now remember, we were talking about sit from down being different from sit from stand. In the case of down from stand, it is a little bit informed by down from sit. They are a little bit related, not perfectly, but a little bit. So sometimes we can get lucky early on. So what I need, first of all, is her to be in a stand. So I'm just going to go ahead and prompt that. Then I'm going to take a full food lure, whoops, and I'm going to go straight to the ground and then just wait and let her work the problem. So she's snuffling away. And I'm just basic good girl, giving her infinite latency. Let her work on it. Let her try stuff. Let her try and fail. Okay, sniffing didn't work. Pawing didn't work. Just standing there didn't work. Sniffing didn't work. Let me try something else. Okay, so when she's in a stand, straight down between her paws, don't go forward, go straight down, and then just wait. And then once they go down, pay. It can be really neat to graph, if you're a statistics type, to graph the latency. Basically, do 10 or 15 reps of this if you're interested. And how long does it take each rep? Now, it won't be a perfect curve. I mean, learning has always got these dips and valleys. But over the broad haul, what you'll see is faster and faster the dog cuts to the chase and actually does the down, because that's what works. And this is lawful. This is one of the most studied phenomena in the history of psychology, is operant conditioning. And if going down works, that's what she's going to do. Now, just a word about down. Lulu, as you see, is going down front end first. And this is sort of a style thing. There are occasionally dogs who, when you're doing down from a stand, they'll do an intermediate sit. And that's fine. In pet dog training, we don't care how they do it. We care that they do it. And over time, that sit will come out in the wash, meaning the dog will more and more quickly cut to the chase and do the down, because she's in more of a rush to get to the reinforcement part than I am. If you intend to do AKC obedience, so obedience trials, it's important that the dog go down front end first, the way Lulu is doing. So if your dog happens to be one who goes down with an intermediate sit, you're going to want to get yourself to the hands of a competitive obedience instructor who's going to show you ways to make that happen. What we're trying to get in competitive obedience is a dog who goes down from a stand without any forward movement. And when they do an intermediate sit, they actually end up doing what we call creeping. They go forward a bit. So that's just a side note. If you have no intentions or no aspirations for AKC obedience, don't worry about how they go down from a stand, just that they do. Lulu happens to be a front end first dog. There we go. And up she comes, and then straight down. And I've lost count, so I'm just going to do one more rep. I imagine I'm at a 6 for 6 or a 7 for 7. Clever girl. Okay, and I'm going to let her go and cogitate on that tonight and think about, okay, what was working in that puzzle that I gave her where I went straight down. Okay, we're going to return now to our next behavior, which is our muzzle station. And where we were was doing our reps. And remember, this is something which is a little bit loaded. It can be scary for dogs. And so if your dog is one who really didn't like the muzzle station, remember, you're going to do a chin rest instead, because that's just a little bit less scary. Lulu, we're going to continue. And we're going to do our 10 reps of step 1, because we really want to consolidate. And I'm going to go touch her over her muzzle and then pay. My order of events is really important. Touch, then pay. Okay. What I'm not doing is I'm not luring her. So I'm not doing that and then changing the deal. Okay. It's really important that we let the dog vote with their feet with something like this that can be a little bit loaded. Body handling, and especially face, especially mouth, can be scary. So I want to see, does she say, yeah, you can do that, and then pay it. I don't want to say, okay, here we go, and then I'm going to change the deal. I want to show her what the deal is up front and let her say, yes, I will allow that, or no, I won't. We want to give her a chance to vote. Okay. I believe I'm on a 4 for 4. 5 for 5. I'm getting a little bit of backing away, and so I'm tucking that in my mind, that's important, that if that trend continues, and that's part of the reason we're doing 10 reps, is we can get a better idea of how it's trending. Then we know that she's sensitizing, which means that this is not getting less scary for her, it's getting a little bit more scary. She's actually getting a little bit more worried. And that's my cue to back off and either do a chin rest or do splits or start over and do it a little bit more gently. There we go. Call that a, whoops. Oh, that's about too bad. Okay, try again. Good girl. There we go. 2 more. She can be in any position she wants. She doesn't have to be in a sit or a stand. It really doesn't matter. In fact, it's kind of good if the dog is comfortable. So you could even practice this when you're on the sofa with your dog. 10 for 10. Okay, we're now going to move on to the next step. The next step is to do it a little bit more firmly. And so rather than just sort of putting a little hat on her muzzle, I'm actually going to squeeze very, very gently. Okay. A little bit more firmly, because what I'm thinking of is eventually this is going to translate into me lifting up her lips to examine her mouth or brush her teeth. So I want to have a little bit more of a grasp on her muzzle. But again, you don't want to be grabbing them. Just pretty gentle what you're doing. It's kind of about that degree of intensity. Just a little bit more than you were doing, and then pay after. And once again, we're going to do 10 reps because I want to see how it's trending, because this is new and a little bit different. Okay, so she's saying that I'm okay with this, but she's not 100% on board. She's tentatively on board. She's saying, this seems safe, and you are giving me snacks, and so far it hasn't hurt, but, and this is natural. This has nothing to do with her in particular. This is a feature of animals. We take it for granted that we can body handle our dogs and cats and our pet animals, but really, if you think about it, nature has endowed them with really good software for defending themselves. And one of the ways animals do this is make sure that nothing sort of comes up and grabs you. So the fact that she's doing this and letting me do this is formidable. We want to go very gradually. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm just pressing a little bit kind of so that I can feel her teeth. And that's one good way of gauging how firm your grasp is. I can just feel that there are teeth under there. I'm not squeezing, and I'm not yet lifting her lip. That will come later. When I translate this into husbandry behaviors, I will actually be lifting up her lip, opening her mouth, and so on. There you go. And once again, because I've been talking, I've lost count. I'm going to call that an 8 for 8. A 9 for 9. And a 10 for 10. Okay, my next step is that I'm going to see if she will volunteer. Okay. And I'm going to put the tunnel and see, will she, oh, what a good girl, and she did. For her to do that on the first trial is really quite something. Plenty of dogs will not do that. So in she goes, good girl, she did. I'm not making her have to travel. I'm not putting it over here so she's got to take a lot of steps. I'm just putting it there and I'm making an offer to her saying, would you like to play this game with me again? And she'll either say yay or nay. She read it as a down cue. Oh, too bad. That's not right. That's not what I want. But seeing as she's in a down, I can still, good girl, offer the tunnel. Because once again, it doesn't matter what position she's in. There's the tunnel. Oh, what a good girl. Now, if you see, she really did vote with her feet, or in this case, her muzzle, to do the behavior. I'm going to put it over here. Oh, what a good girl. What I'm not doing is luring her through. I'm letting her decide, good girl, to do it. Okay, is she going to volunteer? And it's totally her choice. Very good girl. So what she's doing is she's telling me, first of all, I know what this behavior is, and second of all, I'm comfortable doing it. Okay, let's move on to watch. Where we left off watch was we were starting to do Premack, and I'm going to go back one step and just practice my finger to eye, which is my no lure, but prompted with a signal. I'm going to wait for eye contact. Good girl. Okay. She had her eyes on my treat hand and then looked at my eyes. I'm waiting for oh, good girl. The eyes. Oh, what a good girl. Oh, good girl. Very good. That one had sort of the feel of deliberateness. Don't worry about accidents, by the way. There's a saying in dog training, we don't care why they do it, we care that they do it. So if something happens as a happy accident, that's equally good. I'm just waiting for eye contact. She's glued to my treat hand up behind my back. She thought about looking at me. Now, what you see here is really interesting. In the last session, In the last session, she was nailing this and even doing the Premack, and she's regressed a little bit, and that's totally normal. Dogs, just like us, they have good days, they have bad days. Learning is never this sort of beautiful, uphill curve like that. There are always those dips and valleys, and we're used to that. What we do is we just keep good girl. She's got infinity latency, so as long as she's still trying the problem, it's a good rep. Good girl is a 5 for 5. Now I'm going to go on to my Premack. My first Premack is going to be the one where it's legal to verbally prompt her. So the food is out there and oh, what a good girl. Now, wow, she did that really well. She actually did that better than when I had it behind my back. Oh, she's a good girl. Yes, that's a very good girl. 2 for 2. Good girl. Yeah, that was a very nice latency there. Very quick. Oh, good girl. Another one. 4 for 4. Look here. Oh, good girl. Now, that was good. She did it with very minimal verbal prompting. So I'm going to move on to my next step. And the next step is I'm going to do the identical exercise, but this time I'm going to stay silent. I'm going to see if she'll do it just for the hand signal. I'm not allowed to help her with my voice. Oh, what a good girl. She did one. She's nice and warmed up, which is helping. In other words, we've been just doing this exercise, so she's likely to guess right. Good girl, yeah. Oh, what a good girl. Very good girl. 4 for 4. Oh, 5 for 5. Who's my girl? That was very, very good. Okay, so our next exercise is we're going to go back to our recall. And what we've been doing is just at random times, a couple times during the day, giving the sound and then giving her the big party. And that's what we've been doing, and that's the foundation. Once that's happening, and once you see that when you give the sound, the dog visibly brightens up, okay, and you've got what we call a conditioned emotional response. The dog is looking expectant when you make that sound. That tells you that you're ready to go to the next step. And the next step is simply that you're going to be calling the dog or using that sound from another room or from somewhere that's a little bit further away, and then prompting them to you. So in the case of Lulu, because we're here in the studio, I'm going to simulate that. So if she was in another room, I'd go, Lulu, Lulu, good girl. And then she'd come see mommy, come see, good girl. She would come, and then I would give her the big party, okay, and make it the really good stuff. This is, again, not the time when we want to be parsing out as small treats as we can get away with, the way we do for sits and downs and other behaviors. For this, we want to be doing very few reps, big stretches in between, and huge payoffs. Okay, then once the dog is doing that, and you'll know because when you give the sound, the dog will be in another room. They are like a lightning bolt. They come to you. Don't try it outdoors yet. Once they're doing that, your next step is to do a Premack recall, and that's what we're going to show you right now. Okay, we're ready to do our Premack recall, and this is where it gets very, very difficult for dogs. I have Tricia who's going to help me. You need two people for this exercise. One is going to be in the role of the handler, that's going to be me, and one is in the role of the distractor, who's going to be Tricia. So for this, I'm not going to have a bait bag, I'm not going to have any food on my person. All the food is going to be actually in the possession of Trish. She's going to have her hands closed. For Lulu to get some of that, however, she's going to have to unglue herself. She's going to have to come off it and perform a recall to me. So we're working indoors. There's no other distraction. We have control of the only motivation, and that is the treats that Tricia has right here. And so I'm going to go to my station. I'm going to call Lulu. I'm just going to keep prompting her. And initially, she's not going to come. She's not going to even want to think about coming because the source of the treats is there. So she's going to bug Tricia. But I'm going to persevere, and then eventually she'll give up and come, and once she does, Trish is going to come and feed her in position for me. Okay, so show her that what you've got. Lulu, look, I'm going to show her that I have nothing. Look what Auntie has here. Oh, there's goodies. I'm going to go to my station. Lulu, who's a good girl? Come to Auntie. Who's a good girl? Come on. Who's a very good girl? And now Trisha's going to come. And she's going to get given a few treats in position, at my position, and then Trisha's going to go back to her station, and I'm going to let Lulu go back. I'm going to do it again. Lulu, come on, see it. Who's a good girl? Oh, now Trisha's going to come in and pay. What you are seeing almost defies the laws of behavior. Lulu, and I promise you, if not pre-practiced this almost never happens where the dog does it so quickly. Okay, let's try one more. Initially, your dog is probably going to blow you off, and that's normal. Lulu, who's a good girl? Come and see Auntie. Come see Auntie. Lulu, come on. Come. You're a good girl. And then Tricia comes and pays, and what Lulu is learning is that even though I don't have any treats on my person and the bird in the hand seems to be over there, the way to get it is obedience. Okay, we'll do one final repetition. And that barking that you're hearing is conflict. She's frustrated because this is very counterintuitive. Lulu, Lulu, who's my girl? Come to Auntie. Who's a good girl? And then once she gets here, get a hold of her, and then she gets paid. And once again, Lulu did this like pretty much a prodigy. Most dogs are going to spend a good deal of time on the first several reps bugging the distractor. It'll be like pulling teeth. You'll have to prompt your little heart out. Finally, they'll come. And then it'll take multiple reps. And then you're going to send them away to sleep before you see an improvement. Lulu was very, very quick at this exercise. I always send people off to practice Premack recalls with some trepidation. Lulu was a savant at this, just incredible, and your dog is probably going to be much more normal. It's a challenging exercise for most dogs and most people. The very dogs who benefit the most can be molasses slow to respond initially, which will make you feel defeated. You'll prompt your heart out, and it's as though he's deaf. It'll feel like he'll just never do it. This is ridiculous, you'll think. Or he'll finally do one, and then you'll have a dry spell. He doesn't do another one. Persevere. He will get it. And not only will he get it, in his post-training data processing, when he's sleeping, he'll go over and over the weird physics of it, how the world is not as he thought. The way to get his stuff he wants is via obedience, even if it means moving away from an apparent bird in the hand. This is calculus for dogs, and a vital learning watershed. You're changing his brain, so don't give up.